Welcome back to another episode of Falcon Central Radio. I'm Scott Karasik. I'm joined here by my colleague and friend, Aaron Freeman. We're going to talk about the Courtney Roby signing a little bit today, possible guys for those last two roster spots, different overrated and underrated Falcons. There's going to be a good list there. Linebacker analysis, as well as edge players, just kind of going over who's there. They're obviously our favorite position because I think we've talked about them 100 times since the end of the season. And then basically how the pass rush and where we think the pass rush is going to come from, as well as a couple of Falcons mailbag questions that we're going to answer, which they're good ones this week. We got two so far, and if you've got any more, feel free to send them in. We'll answer them live.
Yeah.
But yeah. Aaron?
So, Scott, what are your thoughts on the signing of Courtney Roby? Does he move the needle as far as the Falcons wide receiver position goes?
At wide receiver? Probably not.
Okay.
As a depth returner, as a solid, special teams guy, as someone there to exist on a camp roster, I like him. I don't think he makes the roster.
That's probably a good bet. I think this Drew Davis is the guy he's going to be competing with for a roster spot. I can't imagine a scenario where both of those guys really make the roster. I guess I could if devastation happens at the Falcons wide receiver position, but
yeah, pretty much.
It's just one of those things where Roby's going to cost a little bit more than Davis. He's going to be a little bit older, and if push comes to shove, if it's an even battle, then Davis is going to get the job just because he's cheaper. I'm assuming that Davis is going to win the job because he's pretty entrenched on special teams. And he also has 3 years in the offense, so he should have a leg up on Courtney Roby, who probably has an edge in speed-wise, but other than that, I don't really see, a whole lot of difference between the two of them, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about the edge and speed when you basically lose in every other facet of the game.
Yeah.
Speed you can make up for later on. You can't make up for football intelligence. You can't make up for knowing the offense. So I don't really find speed as... Yeah, Roby probably still runs a 4.4, 4.5, something like that. Drew Davis probably has never run a 4.5, but who cares? Because he's definitely one of the best gunners in the league. And that's just not me saying it. That's... Pro Football Focus had both him and Antone Smith as top 10 gunners in the league. Only team with two of them. That says a lot. And that's why I think both of them keep their roster spots pretty much guaranteed because, yeah, they're not great at their natural positions, but we've seen them both score a bunch of touchdowns at their natural positions. They both have at least 3 or 4 career touchdowns. I feel like Drew Davis scores more touchdowns than Harry Douglas.
That may be true. That may be true.
I feel like Antone Smith scores more touchdowns than Jacquizz Rodgers has.
That may be true as well.
Exactly. Like when they touch the ball, at least they're getting into the end zone. At least they're contributing something to the team. It's not like it's Allen Rossum out there at cornerback sucking it up, but looking great as a returner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like it's it's more like a Kevin Mathis situation. Mathis was a great gunner, and he was also a solid nickel corner.
Mm.
I think Robert McClain's the same way. He's a solid gunner, and he's a great nickel, or not a great. He's a good nickel corner, and he's got to get back to being a great one. Mm-hmm. He's got the potential to be great there. But no, I think Courtney Roby, at his best, makes the roster as the 6th wide receiver if the Falcons keep 6. and they just don't trust any of the rookie undrafted free agents, and they don't feel like keeping a fifth running back. I think that's the only way he makes the roster. I don't really see anything there. I think he's a camp body. The other two signings that I think are going to happen, random guard, so they've got a third-string guard. Random nose tackle, so they've got competition for Dante Rumpf and Travian Robertson. That's what I see.
Okay. Yeah, we talked a little bit about this last week. I think maybe we might see another veteran safety, and maybe a tight end, maybe. But those two spots you named are right up there near the top of the list as well. So it's probably going to be two more signings that aren't big name guys, but guys that can push for a backup spot or something like that, and maybe work out on special teams. That seems to be where they're targeting at least some of their recent signings, like Roby and Dobbins, to help them out there on special teams.
I mean, Ed Reed's out there. Maybe you sign him for a year just to teach the safeties how to be playmakers.
Wouldn't be a bad mentor for Desmond Southwood.
I would honestly like to see him go after Anthony Walters, who played for the Bears the last few years. He's not really a great safety, but he's very athletic. He's very intelligent as a special teams guy, and he can play that Sean Schillinger role pretty well. He's a 4.52, 36-inch vertical jump kind of guy.
He went to Delaware, right?
Yeah, he went to Delaware. He's built like a linebacker. He's 6 foot tall, 215. Maybe even move him up a little bit to there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember him at Delaware a little bit. He was pretty good.
He's a solid player. I like him, but I just don't see. I don't see him starting anytime soon, but I'd bring him in to compete with Kamal Ishmael and Zeke Mata.
Yeah.
He'd be better than Sean Baker. He'd be better than Kamario McFadden. And I liked McFadden at South Carolina State. I think he'd be better than both of them. McFadden's another Sean Schillinger type. Solid, backup, strong safety who can... I don't really know how to explain it. He's there, he's going to compete. If he makes a team, cool, but don't expect him to start or be anywhere close to competent if he does start. That's the best thing I know how to go over. So back to overrated, underrated. I feel like we could do this for each position group.
Okay.
Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, corners, safeties, and then specialists. So quarterbacks, overrated, underrated. I think overrated is probably Sean Renfree. I see a lot of other analysts going, man, I really liked him at Duke. Cutcliffe did a great job, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, shoulder injury, probably didn't, he didn't look good at minicamp and probably isn't going to be, let's put it this way, I wouldn't trust him to start. And I think underrated is Jeff Matthews, who's got a friggin' cannon. Saw Matthews connect up with Bernard Reedy during minicamp and just, dude can launch it. Like Joe Flacco launch it.
Yeah, it's interesting because a couple of years ago, Matt Ryan would have definitely been one of the two. Because I think now we're at a point where Matt Ryan is properly rated wherever you got him, probably in the ballpark. So it's not like there's not the sort of debate on how good a player Matt Ryan is now as it was maybe after 2011. But I'll go with the same guys you listed. Overrated Renfree, underrated Matthews. Matthews does have that arm that's going to make him stand out a little bit more so from the other quarterbacks who aren't exactly blessed with, rocket arms or anything like that. And, the biggest knock on Renfree I had when he came out of Duke was every game I watched him play at Duke, which was like 2 or 3 games, he got knocked out of every one of those games. And, that's just you could say that's random luck or whatever. I just happened to watch the 3 games he got knocked out of. But, you know, that to me is a big issue. If you can't stay healthy, then you can't make the team. And guess what happened to him last summer? He got injured again. So it's really been basically, the last year of Winfrey's career has basically been him just being hurt all the time. So for me, until he can prove he can stay healthy, there isn't a whole lot to go off of. So.
And then you're underrated?
I'll go with Jeff Matthews, just because the arm strength and just because no one knows who he is yet. So, he's underrated, I guess.
It's a little bit easier outside of quarterback, because quarterback you just have those 4 choices. But
Yeah.
Running backs, fullbacks, overrated, underrated.
Overrated, I'm going to say, this is going to be tough. I'm going to say Josh Vaughn. Just because I think a lot of people had a lot of hype on him last summer because he had a couple of big runs, but I think he's an average football player. He's good enough to make a team, but he's not good enough to play. Underrated. I'm gonna say Jacquizz Rodgers, just because I think Dante Freeman's stealing a little bit of his thunder right now, and I think it's making people forget a little bit that Quiz is one of the better pass protecting running backs in the league. Excellent hands, great vision, the types of things that make Quiz. I think people are kind of forgetting that now. So.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm flipping with you.
Okay.
I think Jacquizz Rodgers is overrated. I think right now he's a change of pace back. That's it, nothing more. I like Quiz, but his best role is third down. 3rd and 5. Hey, Quiz, we're going to throw you a quick screen, go get 5 yards. That's his best role. Not, hey, let's throw you out there as a starter. And no, he's a change of pace back, and that's his perfect role. I think underrated, including by a lot of writers, is Devontae Freeman. I think the only people that are really hyping him up are, Vaughn McClure and me. Because I saw a 2nd-round guy when he was at Florida State. I see a guy who could be a long-term starter for years, honestly. I see a guy who could be the next work done with a little bit more weight on him. He's very similar to Ray Rice or, Maurice Jones-Drew or Darren Sproles, minus the ridiculous speed that Sproles has. But he's a 4-4 guy. Shows it on the field. Great player. I don't know. It's tough to dislike him. I think I already know your answer for this one.
I think everybody knows this answer. Overrated, underrated wide receiver. Yeah. Overrated, Harry Douglas. I don't think that needs to be explained. Underrated, I'm going to say Darius Johnson. I think Johnson played very well down the stretch last year. He basically worked his way from being obscure, undrafted free agent to practice squad to number 3 receiver by the end of the year. And now, we've added a couple of wide receivers, and he's seemingly getting lost in the shuffle. But the fact that he was taking starting reps while Julio and Roddy were out kind of tells you that he's still in the mix for that number 4 spot. And it wouldn't shock me if he gets more work on offense this year than Devin Hester.
I'm going to go overrated. No one's going to like this answer, but Roddy White.
Okay. Bold.
Been injured a lot past couple of years. I don't think he's the same kind of guy he was outside last year. A lot of his big plays came from the slot. I think Atlanta's going to use him a lot there this year. In the slot, have Julio outside, line up Julio next to Roddy, and have basically Julio open Roddy up for some more catches. Roddy's not a 4-4 guy anymore. Probably a 4-6 guy. I love Roddy. One of my favorite players, but I think at this point he's starting to get a little overrated from where he was. Underrated, I'm going to go with Geraldo Boldevan.
Okay.
It's a name that I'm going to pump up all summer. When you see a guy play in person and you see him just make guys that were supposed to be on his same level look like kids, it's fun to watch, but he looks like Brian Finneran. And, maybe Brian Finneran wants to see a clone of himself on the field, but I think even if Boldevine doesn't make the roster this year, I think he's got at least a shot to stay on the practice squad. I don't see any way he just doesn't stick with the Falcons in some way. And if he doesn't, I think some other team's going to enjoy what they get from him. He's going to provide someone with some sort of talent, whether they want to or not. Tight ends. Over, underrated.
Oof. Oh, wow.
Well, you just want to skip them because none of them are really rated. They're all underrated. They're all like, no, Falcons have no talent.
Guess if I had to choose. Oh, wow. I don't know.
Yeah, we're going to skip them. We're going to go straight to the offensive line because there's no such thing as an overrated Falcons tight end right now. Everyone's going, that's a big, giant hole. All right, offensive lineman. Overrated, underrated.
Offensive line. I mean, I'm trying to think of who should I say who's overrated other than Sam Baker. I'm trying to see if there's a good second choice.
There's not.
Yeah, I can't come up.
Unless you ask your boy Ryan, then it's James Stone, who he thinks is going to be the next great football player on the Falcons roster.
So, so Sam Baker's overrated, and who's underrated? I'll say, because I think I know who you're going to pick, I'm going to say Mike Johnson. Just because I think Johnson has played well when he's been healthy. He just always seems to get hurt right when he's about to win a starting job.
Yeah.
So I don't think he can start, but I think he, if not for the fact that, he always gets injured, I think he probably would have started the past 3 years and been decent for us the past 3 years, if not for injury. So that's who I'll pick.
Fair enough. Overrated, since you've already said Sam Baker. I'm going to go with a different name and say Justin Blaylock.
Okay.
He was the only good Falcons lineman last year. But when the only good Falcons lineman last year was average, it doesn't say much. I think this year Baker, whether he plays left tackle or right tackle, or as long as he can stay healthy, he's going to be an asset. I think Blaylock will be an asset, but I think at best those two are average. Matthews and Asamoah could be really, really good. Now for underrated, you might be a little shocked to hear this. I'm going to go with Peter Collins.
Oh, wow. Okay, I thought you were going to pick Ollie.
No, Hawley is Todd McClure, through and through, in every single way. He will never get his name mentioned outside of oh, hey, that guy looks pretty good. But I don't think I'm ever going to vote for him for a Pro Bowl. But I do like his play. That's Joe Hawley. And that's about where he's always going to stay. He's a no-named, lunch pail kind of center. And that's why I like Joe Hawley. I think long-term, Peter Collins moves to left guard.
Okay.
Because I think that's his best fit. He's not a power guy. He's not a right guard. He's a technique kind of guy. And I think if he learned behind Blaylock for at least a year or two and didn't start and got a chance to really sit and learn from Mike Tice how to play football, it'd be a better fit. And I think that as a backup center, he does provide value. And I think Mike Johnson and Harlan Gunn provide value there. But I don't think that Peter Collins is going to be cut in any way. I think his best fit is sit behind Hawley, learn from Justin Blaylock how to play left guard, eventually slide into left guard, and he might look competent. And yes, Joe Hawley is my boy, but I think the amount of times that I pumped him up, I don't think anybody would call him over or underrated. He's rated right where he should be.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I just figured you were gonna pick Hawley, but okay.
Outside of your boy Ryan.
Yeah. All right, defensive line. Overrated, underrated. I'm gonna pick the same guys I would have picked at the end of last season, just because I don't want to pick anybody who's new. So I'm gonna pick overrated as OC, underrated as Babineau. I think Babineau is always underrated, and I think OC's overrated. You know, people look at his sacks, so 7.5 last year, and think, oh, OC had a pretty good year. Not really. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, congratulations, OC, for getting 7.5 sacks, but you know, I don't think it really. I think that's a very good example of when sacks lie. When you look at some sack totals, and makes you think they're better than they actually are.
For me, that's Tyson Jackson. He's overrated because people are like, yeah, he's going to give us 4 sacks and he's going to give us good run defense. No. He's going to give you good run defense. That's what he's going to give you. Any sack he gives you more than that is gravy. He is a run defender and a block eater, basically. Paul Soliai, same kind of guy. Underrated on that line, I'm going with Malachi Goodman. Gets completely lost in the shuffle because Atlanta spent so much time and money and resources on the line. He's going to have an impact. Even if it's just the third guy in the rotation at defensive end, he's going to have an impact. Him, Hageman, Tyson Jackson, John Babineau, Corey Peters, Soliai, they're going to have a great rotation at defensive end, defensive tackle this year. And honestly, I think Goodman has a potential to beat out Tyson Jackson, not this year, but next, for the starting role. And I think if he does that, Jackson's going to be in his last year with the Falcons. Because they can get out of his deal after 2 years and not really have to pay him more than, say, 11 once they cut him after June 1st of the next year. So they can really have a little bit of cap hit for 4 years, but it's not going to be that bad. All right, edge players, linebackers, overrated and underrated.
I'm torn between picking Corey Bierman or Prince Shimbo for overrated. I'm gonna go with Shimbo just because I can't hate on my boy Corey right there, but I think Shimbo is the expectations for Shimbo long term may be a little too high. I think he's at best Stephen Nicholas, but that's like if everything works out, he's Stephen Nicholas. But like not the young Stephen Nicholas that was decent, kind of the old Stephen Nicholas that was kind of worn down and busted. I hope I'm wrong about Shimbo, but I see him as a career backup. Underrated. Let's go with Joplo Bartu. I think Bartu showed some good things last year. I think he'll be put in a situation where he'll be asked to step up and replace Sean Witherspoon. I don't think he's going to be, Sean Witherspoon on his best day, but I think he can do some of the things that Witherspoon could do, and I think he'll be a good player for the Falcons this year.
I think that's a fair comparison. I think Bartu is a good fit for underrated, but I'm going to go a different route. I think overrated as far as edge players, linebackers concerned, I am going to go with Corey Bierman. Love Corey Bierman. One of my favorite players on the Falcons. But coming off of an Achilles injury, you don't know if he's going to be the same kind of guy. Again, very good player, but if he's not going to be the same kind of guy that he was before the injury, you don't know what you've got. When Sean Merriman had an Achilles injury, he went from great to nothing. I mean, sure, he was caught doing steroids as part of it, but he tends to be the rule as opposed to the exception when it comes to Achilles injuries. I don't see Bierman having the same kind of, Brent Grimes type recovery there. On the flip side, as far as underrated is concerned, I think at this point, Jonathan Massaquoi is underrated. A lot of people, you're not hearing many people go, oh, Jonathan Massaquoi is going to be the guy to break out. Jonathan Massaquoi's got talent. He can do it. He can get after the passer. He can stop the run. He's a good fit as a 3-4 weak side linebacker in Nolan's scheme. He's probably the most perfect fit the Falcons have had for it. And when he was coming out, everybody knew he was a developmental guy. He was a raw athlete with a lot of talent. And I think he ends up being the 10-sack guy that people are asking for. And then I'm even guilty of this myself. I think Stanley Mapanga, I said earlier in the season, in the offseason, that I didn't think he was going to make the roster, but I think at this point he definitely does make the roster because I was counting on Joplo Bartu staying at outside linebacker as an edge player behind Bierman. But with Weatherspoon going down, with Keem Dent getting traded, that kind of throws the wrench into the plans. And unless Yawin Smallwood beats out Tim Dobbins, I think he's the guy he's the guy who would be out at linebacker. But no, I think Mapanga is a little underrated too. He's got a lot of the same measurables that Elvis Dumervil had, and I could see him maybe not have the same kind of not the same kind of second year Dumervil had, or the same kind of first year Wake had, but I could see him contributing 3 or 4 sacks on very limited time, like 200 snaps, getting 3 or 4 sacks and getting some good pressure, and people going, well, he's got some potential. Because when I was watching him at minicamp, he stood out. I was wrong. It happens.
Okay.
Cornerbacks. Overrated, underrated.
Overrated, I'll probably catch some flack for this, but I'll say Robert Alford. Not to say that Robert Alford isn't a good player. It's kind of the same thing you just said about Bierman. I think he'll be good this year. I think expectations are probably a little higher than they should be on him. I think people are expecting him to come in this year and immediately be like a top 20 corner. I think he'll have his moments where he looks like a top 20 corner. I think he'll also have some moments when he doesn't look like a top 20 corner. I think, this is probably not a fair comparison, but there's a lot of Dante Robinson to him, and not in the sense that he's going to, suck like Dante did, but just there'll be times where he's out of position, where it's like, what are you doing on that play? Like, there was a lot of plays that Dante made where you're like, what were you thinking on that play? And I think Alford made a couple of those, and he'll have a couple of those here. He'll also make a lot of, make some picks. Probably have like 4 or 5 picks. He'll probably break up, 15 passes. And he'll overall have a good season, but, I don't know if he's going to – I think there'll be ups and downs with him. Underrated – I'm gonna pick Robert McClain, not necessarily because I think he'll look like his 2012 version. It'll probably, in all likelihood, it'll probably be somewhere between where he was in 2012 and where he was in 2013, where he wasn't so good. But I just think McClain is underrated because he does a lot of the little things well, and even if he isn't the team's nickel cornerback this year, I think he's shown, whether it's playing special teams, whether it was returning punts. I've been pounding the table saying we should give him looks at safety all offseason. I think he can do anything. Like, he's basically Jason Snelling for the defense. Like, whatever you want to do with Robert McClain, you want him to tackle, you want him to cover, you want him to play special teams, you want to return kicks, whatever, he can do everything pretty well, and I think that makes him underrated.
I agree. I think McClain is underrated, but I also think Ricardo Allen is a little bit underrated. He was a playmaker at Purdue, and he showed a lot more speed at Purdue than his 40 time would suggest. You could say the same about Brent Grimes too. When he was at Shippensburg, showed a lot more speed than his 40 time showed, and then in the NFL, he showed a lot more speed than his 40 time showed did too, or than his 40 time did show too. I think some guys just don't know how to run a 40. And Ricardo Allen's one of those guys. He has no idea how to run a 40 properly. Very intelligent player, not afraid to hit somebody. I think if anybody beats McClain out, it's not going to be Wilson or Arenas. I think it's going to be Allen. He's a playmaker. He's a guy who could get 3 or 4 picks just playing in the nickel. You know, he's one of those guys that worst case, he's Kevin Mathis. Best case, he's Brent Grimes, part 2. You know, he's got a low floor, or he's got a high floor but a low ceiling. You know? Not saying that Brent Grimes is a low ceiling, but I'm saying, like, Brent Grimes as a nickel corner his 2nd or 3rd year, low ceiling. Not like Brent Grimes, the top 5 cornerback right now, low ceiling. So, yeah, I mean, he's a nickel corner who's going to make some plays and give you potentially give you a return for a touchdown, like Mathis or Grimes used to do. I think overrated at this point. You already took Alford, so I'm going to go with Josh Wilson. He started for the Redskins last year. Not a fan of what he can do. He got ran over by Steven Jackson. He's a nickel corner who shouldn't have been playing outside. But because he has outside experience, he's probably going to make the roster over Javier Arenas, honestly. He's just a better player. All right, safeties. And I think we can skip kickers, punters, and specialists because...
Okay.
I mean, as a whole, that entire unit ends up a little underrated.
Safeties. Underrated, I'm pick Dwight Lowry. He's probably rated at, he's probably not either overrated or underrated at this point, but for most of the offseason, I think he's pretty underrated, so I'll pick him. I think he'll be a good player for us. I think he'll be an upgrade over what Thomas Deku was last year. Not, maybe he's probably not going to make a Pro Bowl, but, I think he's always been a better player than Thomas Deku, even when Deku made the Pro Bowl, so that tells you something there. Overrated. I mean, I guess what are my other choices? William Moore, Desmond Southward, Kamal Ishmael?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, it's not like I can say Sean Baker's overrated. No one rates Sean Baker. I guess I'm not going to pick Willie Moe, so I guess I'll just have to pick. Wow, I guess I have to pick Southward just because he's going to be a backup. I don't think he's going to compete for a starting spot. I think he's a redshirt year this year, play special teams. He'll probably be a beast on special teams. He really needs a year to sit and learn because he doesn't have a ton of experience. He's never really had to make line calls. Last year was like the first year he ever played in the slot. So, and if he's going to eventually stick in Nolan's defense, he's going to have to play a lot more in the slot. So, a lot of technical issues that need to be refined. So, I guess I have to pick Southward because he's probably just going to ride the bench as a rookie. So, I don't know.
That's fair. I think overrated is Dwight Lowry.
Okay.
Because I was never impressed with him when he was with the Jets or the Jaguars or pretty much anyone. Average at best safety. I think underrated is Kamal Ishmael. And that might even be by the team. Very, very good tackler. Very good tackler. Intelligent player. good special teamer. He should make the roster, unless Zeke Mata winds up as Zeke Mata. Broken neck, but still makes the roster because he's a solid tackler and they see something more in him than they see in Kamal. But I think Kamal Ishmael is going to end up being the starter if Lowry goes down with another concussion.
Okay. Underrated Matt Bosher, overrated Josh Harris, special teams. There it is. Boom.
Dude, like I said, special teams as a unit is just underrated. All right, linebacker analysis time.
All right, let's do it.
Inside, outside, inside guys. Paul the Warlock Warlow. I mean, he's Paul Warlow. What else can we say? Great human being off the field. Good football player on it. Needs to get better, but he's working his butt off to get better. So, he's got things he's got to improve on. He was a rookie last year, rookie undrafted free agent. He looked NFL average, which is why I think he's going to be a great long-term player. I didn't even think he was going to start last year because I thought they were too committed to Akeem Dent in the middle. Now Dent's playing for the Texans, so look at what I know. Sometimes Thomas Dimitroff surprises us and actually does the right thing that makes you go, wow. He really does know how to analyze players every now and again.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joplo Bartu, I can't. I mean, I've said multiple times that I think he might be a better fit for Nolan's defense than Weatherspoon is. He sheds blockers better. He's a little stronger. He may not be as big, but he's a little stronger. Shembo. The reason why I don't think Shembo starts is because I think he's the same fit that Paul Warlow is. I think he's a strong inside guy, not a weak inside guy. So I don't see any way that he would start because he'd really be competing with Warlow unless they move Warlow to the weak side and have Shemba in the stronger side as like that Ted Plugger type role. I don't see it. Tim Dobbins, between him and Yaman Smallwood, I don't know who makes the roster. I think they're the same guy. Those two and Akeem Dent. Backup, strong inside linebackers who are good special teams players. Only Yaman Smallwood has more potential. But I think you keep Dobbins and you put Smallwood on the practice squad if you can do it. And then Marcus Sproul, I don't know why he was drafted. I really don't. You saw a lot of Syracuse. Did you see anything worth it?
He's fast. That's all it really is. I mean, you can't take on a blocker or shed a blocker to save his life. But he can run from point A to point B probably faster than, with the exception of maybe Bartu, they're probably faster than any of our linebackers. So I guess if that applies to special teams, sure, that'd be great. I don't see him starting, getting a lot of reps on defense. But.
I mean, that's where I'm at. I don't really see anything there outside of a long-term depth guy. Now, Jacquez Smith, Brandon Daly, Walker May, throw those three guys in. I don't think any of them contribute anything past camp bodies. No offense to any of the agents or anything that might be watching this. I don't see any of those three guys as legitimate NFL roster makers. We had Warlow and Bartu last year that we saw do it. I don't think we'll see it again this year because the Falcons went out and drafted guys to compete with those two. Although I don't think anyone really legitimately competes with them. And then on the edge, I like Bierman if he's fully healthy. I think Bierman, OC, and, I like Bierman, but he's got to stay healthy. Otherwise, he's nothing. Otherwise he's just a guy sitting on your bench. OC, he'll get 10 sacks this year probably just from being a designated pass rusher. He's overrated, and they'll all be coverage sacks, but who cares? He'll hit the quarterback, so people go, well, OC still got it. But that's OC. I think Massaqua's the one to break out. I really think there's a lot that you're going to see from Massaquoi this year. And Maponga's, like I said earlier, Maponga's underrated, even by me. I got to change my tune a little bit on him. He's got some potential. Will he see it? I don't know. But he should at least see 200, 300 snaps. And then if Bierman goes down, I think Maponga's the first one up. Starr's not ready yet. Gotta love Tyler Starr, but he's not anywhere close to ready yet. He needs a good year of just, staying as the 53rd man on the roster. Basically what Maponga did last year. He was the 53rd man on the roster. He saw like 2 plays all year. Maybe a little more, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. The big questions I have is really about the rookies, because I think, Maslow is going to start, Bierman's going to start, Warlow's going to start, Bartu's going to start. OC's going to be, designated pass rusher, DPR. He'll come in nickel situations, and that's basically all he'll do. To me, the big question, and this kind of applies to whether or not Tim Dobbins makes the team, is how good a summer does Tyler Starr, Prince Shimbo, Yalwin Smallwood have? And yeah, I'll throw Marcus Sproul in there as well. But it's like, if Dobbins is going to make the roster, it's probably going to be because none of those rookies really stood out in camp. I don't know which one of those guys is going to step up. It seems like, the Falcons are putting their eggs in the Shimbo basket right now. And if Shimbo comes out and plays well this summer, then, I think Dobbins is out of here. But if not, then I think the Falcons are going to basically be like, we got to keep one veteran linebacker that can play in the event that, Bierman does get hurt. What happens if Bierman gets hurt? Does Bartu move back to the strong side? And does Dobbins start at the weak side? I don't know. Maybe that's one strategy. But it's one of those situations where you kind of are a little bit worried if you're gonna, what happens if someone gets hurt and you're gonna wind up starting a rookie for 10 games or something like that. So if any of those guys have good summers, then it's not a big deal. But if they're kind of they're basically the anti-Warlow or the anti-Bartu from what they were last summer, then that's probably not going to be great. As for the edge rushers, I think Massaquoi is going to have a good year. When I watched the Falcons, when I reviewed Falcons games last year, to me the difference between Massaquoi and OC didn't exist. There was no difference between them. OC seemed to get the sacks when he got the sacks, and Massaquoi always seemed to be like a step slow to get to finish in order to get the hit or the sack or the pressure or whatever. And so if Brian Cox and all the coaches can get him to speed up his game a little bit, refine his technique a little bit, so he's a half step quicker, all of a sudden I could see him going from being the guy that got 4 sacks last year to being the guy that gets 8 sacks this year.
Or if he just happens to, I don't know, have an interior pass rusher that can eat a double team to where he's not eating double teams 2 out of every 3 plays. That would help out too.
Yeah. And it'll also help if he doesn't spend half the year playing on the strong side like he did last year when Bierman got hurt. And then it wasn't until like the second half of last season when they kicked him over to the weak side. And that's when I was like, yeah, there is no difference between OC and Massaquoi.
He's playing on the weak side this year.
What?
He's playing on the weak side this year.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, that'll help him because he's better on the weak side because he doesn't have to take on, big right tackles and get chipped by tight ends because we know he's not the world's biggest guy. He's about 260, and that's he played basically at Troy at like 250 or 248 or something. So that's kind of his natural size. Yeah, and Mapanga's interesting because to me, like I kind of expected Mapanga to make strides, and you were at minicamp a couple weeks ago, and you said that you saw him making those strides. One of the reasons why I thought that was because Mapanga, to me, reminds me a lot of Lawrence Sidbury, and I know a lot of people are kind of like, Sidbury, he didn't do nothing. Sidbury was actually underrated when he was here in Atlanta, and he really took that next leap as his second year, and various reasons, and I've heard scuttlebutt that was a more political reason why Sidbury didn't work out in Atlanta, more so than player issues. But I think Mapanga has the potential to be that sort of guy that could ultimately end up taking Lacy's job.
It was a political issue. Sidbury didn't work out.
I've heard it said, and I think it's plausible, that the Falcons really wanted Corey Bierman to play. And even though Sidbury was a better pass rusher than Bierman was, because Bierman could do other things and because they were really pushing Bierman for whatever reason, because, he's Corey Bierman, basically Sidbury got lost in the shuffle. So that's the political reasons.
That's what happens when a coach likes a player who's willing to do whatever it takes to get on the field.
It's fair as well. So.
Again, I liked Sidbury, but I think it had a little bit more to do with the fact that he was a horrible run defender and he wasn't good on special teams as to why he didn't get any playing time.
I think that's fair. That's the reason I'm going with, but I just throwing out the political discussion because I've heard people say it. So
where Mapanga is solid on special teams and isn't afraid to at least learn run defense. He's at least willing in run defense. Sidbury just kind of looked like he took plays off in run defense. That's why he didn't stick. That's why the Falcons didn't keep him. And then he went up to Indy and didn't do anything for a year because he got injured. I mean, I'm not seeing talent there. I saw talent there when he was coming out of college, but the work ethic wasn't there.
That's fair. But I do think Sidbury probably was our second best pass rusher when he was there. He was better than Ray Edwards. I think he was better than other guys, and he wasn't playing. If you're putting your best pass rushers on the field, your four best pass rushers on the field, I thought over his last 2 years here in Atlanta, Sidbury belonged in that group.
Oh, I agree there. They probably should have put Sidbury, Peters, Babineau, and Abraham as their pass rush group, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And they're probably not going to. They weren't ever going to. All right, mailbag questions.
Let's do it.
We got 8 minutes left. The show's kind of gone pretty quickly today. Smorgasbord9. Always a fun name to say. Goes, Hageman, is he going to be a major contributor this year, and what is his role?
I would say my expectations for Hageman's contributions this year are about the same as what they were for Goodman last year. He'll be a rotation player. He'll flash on occasion, but he's not going to have, I think if any Falcon fan is expecting him to come in and be this threat as a pass rusher or be this dominant run stopper right off the bat, I think they're setting themselves up for disappointment. I think he can eventually be that guy, but that's probably not going to be that guy until like 2016 or something like that. But for this year, he'll play, 200, 300, maybe 400 snaps. I think he'll add value and more in the run game than he does as a pass rusher this year. But, we'll see how that goes.
I'd have to agree with that. I think he's probably going to be, backup nose tackle this year because he played a lot of one tech in college. And I think he'll probably play a little bit of three technique, especially in the 2-4-5 sets that Nolan likes to run. And I think after those two spots, he's probably not going to play a lot because that's what he played a lot of in college. Now he'll probably play some 5 tech, they're probably going to be like, hey, learn how to play some 5-tech, and he'll get, 100 out of the 2,000 snaps that we play on defense this year between the two 5-tech spots. But I don't see him starting there, being there every snap. I see most of his snaps coming from the 1, from the 3, playing that kind of role. So, and then Steve in Brooklyn asks a great question. If the Falcons were to start 1-6 and finish 8-8, do you think Mike Smith and Thomas Dimitroff would survive?
I would say yes, only because I'm assuming they start 1-6 because like somebody got hurt, someone really good got hurt, and they lost a lot of close games at the beginning of the year, and then they finished the season going 7-1. I would think they would survive, but I wouldn't say it's a definite. It really. I mean, when coaches get fired, it's really about how does the owner feel about the coach in December, whether or not a coach gets fired. Because when Jim Moore got fired, going up into that radio interview that he did, he wasn't really on the hot seat. But once he did that radio interview, Arthur Blank was like, wait a second, do I really want to keep this guy if he's going on the radio and saying his dream job is Washington? And so that's really what it is. It's basically like, you can you hear it all the time when they're talking about the hot seat, and it's like, this guy's kind of safe, and there's like a tracker of like how the season goes, but it's really about how the owner feels at the end of the season. Does he like the coach? Does he think he can get a better guy? I don't know. I would assume if the Falcons finish as strong as Steve's hypothetical and finish winning 7 out of the last 8 games, I would assume Arthur Blank would be feeling a lot better about Mike Smith, so he would stay.
Yeah, I'm going to go with yes, they will be fired.
Okay.
I think unless they make the playoffs this year, they're gone.
Okay.
No matter what it takes, they got to make the playoffs. Now, if they go 10-6 after starting 1-6, I think Blank will be like, well, you guys had a little rocky start there, but you turned it around and you had a nice streak. But especially if they win the Super Bowl after that, because he'd be like, well, that was a nice win streak. Continue it. But I think if they're 1-6, Blank will pull him into the office and be like, you either turn this shit around or you're gone. Because he seems very, how do I put this? He's very New York Mafia kind of attitude. Like, I like you, but if you screw up one more time, you're gone. Like, you're gone. Yeah, I think they'd both be gone. And I don't think there's any way that Thomas Dimitroff gets a second head coach to work with either.
Okay.
I think it's Mike Smith or he's gone. That being said, Rex Ryan only has a 1-year contract, and if you want someone who can come in and change things around and be that good coach, the only thing Rex Ryan really needs is a good quarterback who understands the offense and what he's got. That'll work with an offensive coordinator to develop an offense. Ryan has the best defenses in the league year in, year out. And it's not like his scheme is too much different than Mike Nolan's.
Yes,
if you look at it from a conceptual standpoint, really not too much different. He's got his big old fatty and Stoli eye. He'd have his 3-4 front. It'd be a true 3-4 defense with a lot of 46 principles in it. I mean, same kind of defense Nolan's running. A lot of offset 3-1-5s, defensive line lineups. It'd be a fun defense to watch. It'd actually be good. But yeah.
We're talking. We're speculating next Falcons head coaches. I'll throw out a name. Bill Cowher.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
I think Blank would make a serious run at Bill Cowher. I think he wants a. If he's going to fire Mike Smith, I think he's going to hire a coach that has Super Bowl experience.
I think by trying to do that, it doesn't make any sense. I think you bring in a guy who is going to be the next Bill Belichick, the next, you know, the best coaches, the best dynasty coaches are the second-time retreads
Mm-hmm.
or top coordinators. Bill Belichick is a second-time head coach who was a top coordinator when he got hired. So maybe a guy like Marty Morningweg, maybe a Gary Kubiak could be the guy. Although I'm not a Kubiak fan by any means. Maybe Hugh Jackson is the guy. Great offensive coordinator, but he'd have to have the right defensive guy. Maybe they can keep Mike Nolan, because if the reason why they fail is because of offensive failings and not defensive failings, I think the personnel's much better than it's been, and I think trying to force Sam Baker as the starting left tackle is going to backfire. And I think a couple games into the season, they're going to want to flip him. They're going to want to flip Matthews and Baker. Because they're just going to be like, Baker doesn't have the mobility anymore. He didn't have it last year. That's why he looked so awful at the beginning of the season. He should have never been playing left tackle. And then Lamar Holmes wouldn't have looked as crappy because he would have been able to practice at left tackle. And I'm a big believer in Lamar Holmes. If Baker gets injured, whatever. Holmes can start at right tackle and look competent. Especially with a guard next to him who knows what the hell he's doing. It's not Garrett Reynolds. All right.
Yeah.
He was starting to look semi-competent at left tackle last year, but the right side kept collapsing, so he kept collapsing, and you can only hold up for so long.
Yeah.
So as a whole, adding Jake Matthews was brilliant, and I hope it all works out. I don't want to see Smitty or Dimitroff leave. I think they're both good, really good at their job, and they're just that one thing away from doing it all. Just like Lovie Smith in Chicago. He was just one or two pieces away in 2006 from doing it all. From winning the entire thing with his group. It's just, you got to have a little bit of luck. Got to have a little bit of luck.
It's a lot of luck. Yeah. We need Raheem Moore to trip and blow a deep coverage in order for you to make the Super Bowl. That's what you need. You need Harry Douglas to trip and not score a touchdown in order for you to make the Super Bowl. So a lot of random luck that winds up being the team that wins it all and the team that doesn't.
Exactly. San Francisco went to 3 out of 4, they've been to 3 in a row NFC Championship games. Only been to 1 Super Bowl out of that group.
Yeah, and it was one or two plays in each of those losses, and they would have won those games, and 1 or 2 plays in their one win over the Falcons, and they could have lost that game. So,
and I think Atlanta would have beat Baltimore that year.
Yeah.
I think they were just a better team. The last 2 years, the NFC Championship game, I felt, has been the real Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, even 2011, when the Giants won, it was the right move. It was the NFC title game was the Super Bowl. Anyway, it's 11:03. We're a little bit past time. I'm going to let Aaron lead us out.
All right. Well, that's another Falcons Central radio show. Check us out next week or pretty much every Tuesday night. You can hit us up on Twitter. I'm at FalcFans. Find my stuff at FalcFans.com. Scott is at Scott Karasik. He's also DraftFalcons.com. He's also writing for the Bleacher Report. And hit up the show at Falcon PFC and get those mailbag questions in, and that's the show.